I never thought I'd be the type to cheat. That's the lie I told myself for years, the one that kept me feeling like a decent man while my eyes wandered. My name is Daniel, 35, settled, and by all appearances happy. I live with Aaron, my partner of 7 years. He's the kind of man people envy me for, tall, handsome, reliable. He knows how to plan a future, balance a budget, and fix a leaking tap. He also knows how to turn off the lights at exactly 10 p.m., roll to his side, and breathe evenly until morning. Lately, that steady breathing felt less like comfort and more like a reminder. Nothing about us surprised me anymore. I loved him. I still do, maybe, but there was a space between us now, a silent gap neither of us seemed brave enough to close. I met Liam on a Tuesday, the kind of day that felt too ordinary to change anything. I was working from a cafe that smelled like cinnamon and burnt espresso. The place was nearly empty except for a young man at the counter, laughing with the barista. He had a way of leaning in when he spoke, as if every word deserved to be shared like a secret. When he glanced my way, his eyes locked on mine like he'd been waiting for me. It wasn't a polite glance, it was an assessment, a decision. "You're in my spot," he said, strolling over. His voice carried a confidence that made me smirk. "I didn't see your name on it," I replied. "Well," he said, pulling out the chair across from me, "consider it claimed now." That's how Liam became part of my afternoon. He was 23, studying architecture, and had a crooked grin that made me feel like I'd already agreed to something dangerous without knowing the terms. Our conversation darted between playful teasing and unexpectedly personal questions. He asked if I was seeing anyone. I told him yes. He didn't flinch. "I don't mind complicated," he said, sipping his coffee, eyes holding mine over the rim. That sentence hung between us long after he left. I told myself it was just harmless banter. People flirt sometimes without meaning anything by it. Still, I noticed how the rest of the day felt sharper, louder, more alive. That evening, Aaron came home and told me about a new project at work. I nodded in the right places, smiled when he did, but my mind kept drifting back to Liam's grin, his casual way of erasing boundaries. A week later, I saw him again. Same cafe. Same confidence. "You're late," he said as if we'd made plans. I told him I hadn't realized we were keeping appointments. "Well," he said, leaning back in his chair, "you are now." We talked for over an hour. He told me about his favorite buildings, the professors he couldn't stand, the parties he didn't remember leaving. At one point, he reached across the table, brushing a crumb from my sleeve with his fingertip. It was nothing, and it was everything. When I stood to leave, he tilted his head and asked, "You free Friday night?" I hesitated. "Why?" He shrugged. "I want to show you something." "Don't worry, it's not illegal." "Probably." I told him I'd think about it. On the walk home, I realized I was already rehearsing excuses for Aaron. Friday came, and so did my lie. I told Aaron I was meeting an old friend from college. He kissed me goodbye without looking up from his phone. Liam took me to an old rooftop overlooking the city. The air was cool, carrying the scent of rain on metal. Neon lights bled into the clouds, and the streets below looked almost unreal. We stood side by side, not speaking for a while. "Ever feel like you're watching your own life from above?" he asked quietly. I nodded. "More than I'd like." He turned to me then, his face close enough that I could feel the warmth of his breath. "I like this view," he murmured, "but I think I'd like you more." The kiss happened before I could think about whether I wanted it, or maybe I'd been thinking about it since the first day. It wasn't slow or gentle, it was certain. The world around us blurred, leaving only the press of his mouth and the pounding in my chest. When we finally pulled apart, I laughed, not because it was funny, but because I needed to release something. "Complicated enough for you?" I asked. He smiled. "We're just getting started." I knew I should leave. Instead, I stayed until the sky began to pale with morning. When I finally walked into my apartment, Aaron was asleep. I watched him for a moment, His hand curled under his cheek the same way it had for years. I felt a twist of guilt, sharp but fleeting. In its place, a new thought took root. I wondered when I'd see Liam again. The first time with Liam should have been enough. One night, one kiss, one guilty memory to keep tucked away. But guilt is a strange thing. Sometimes it makes you hide, and sometimes it makes you crave the very thing you should avoid. For the next week, Liam's name lit up my phone more often than it should have. I told myself I could stop whenever I wanted. That lie held up right until the Thursday afternoon he sent, "You're too quiet. Meet me tonight." I typed "I can't" 3 times before deleting it and replying where. We ended up at his apartment, a small loft above a record store, filled with mismatched furniture and the faint scent of sandalwood. He poured me a drink without asking what I liked, and I drank it without asking what it was. "Still complicated?" he asked, leaning against the counter, that crooked smile daring me to admit what we both knew. "More than ever," I said. The space between us disappeared like it had been waiting to. His mouth found mine with the kind of certainty that comes from knowing you're wanted. The night blurred into a collage of laughter, whispered names, and the sound of rain against the skylight. When I left, dawn was bleeding into the sky. My phone buzzed as I stepped into the street. "Aaron, up early?" I stared at the message, then shoved the phone back into my pocket. I couldn't lie and couldn't tell the truth, so I chose silence. That weekend, Aaron suggested we hit the gym together, something we hadn't done in months. I agreed, maybe out of guilt, maybe because I wanted to prove to myself I could still be normal. That's where I met Noah. He was in the free weight section, tank top clinging to a body built on discipline and sweat. He caught me watching him in the mirror and grinned, not shy, not arrogant, just knowing. "Need a spot?" he asked. "I'm good," I lied, because the last thing I needed was someone else making me forget what boundaries looked like. Aaron joined me a moment later, clapping Noah on the shoulder like they were old friends. "This guy's a machine," Aaron said. "Noah, this is Daniel." "Daniel, Noah." The handshake lingered just long enough to register as more than polite. His palm was warm, his grip firm, his eyes holding mine with a question neither of us spoke aloud. We worked out in pairs, Aaron and I, Noah and someone else, but every time I glanced his way, he was already looking back. It was a conversation without words, and it unsettled me how fluent I was in it. Afterward, in the locker room, Noah passed me on his way to the showers. His arm brushed mine, and he leaned just close enough to murmur, "See you around." That night, Aaron fell asleep early. I scrolled through my phone, not looking for anything in particular, until a new message popped up from an unknown number. "So, you and Aaron have been together how long?" I frowned, typed back, "Who is this?" The reply came instantly, "Noah. Didn't think I'd let you leave without finding a way to reach you." A part of me knew I should block him. Another part, the same reckless part that answered Liam's texts, was already typing back. We messaged for an hour. His words were playful, suggestive, pushing just enough to test the fence without knocking it down. "I'm not looking for trouble," I sent at one point. "That's okay," he replied. "Sometimes trouble finds you." 2 days later, I met Liam again. He was more possessive this time, asking where I'd been, who I'd been with. I laughed it off, but something in his eyes sharpened. "You're not seeing anyone else, are you?" he asked, half joking, half serious. I told him no. It wasn't technically a lie, not yet. We ended the night tangled in his sheets, the city lights crawling across the walls. And still, when I left, my thoughts drifted to Noah's last message. "See you soon." Back home, Aaron stirred in bed as I slid under the covers. "You smell different," he murmured, half asleep. "Just the weather," I said. But my pulse was still racing, and in the dark, I realized the truth. Liam had been my first step off the edge. Noah might be the shove that sent me over completely. Noah didn't wait long to make his move. 2 nights after our locker room exchange, I got a message. "Aaron's working late, right? Come by. Just to talk." I stared at the text, knowing exactly what "just to talk" meant. I could have ignored it, should have ignored it, but the truth is I liked the danger. Liam had been heat and chaos, but Noah felt different. Controlled. Calculated. Like he knew exactly how far to push before the edge. His apartment was clean in a way that made me think he didn't live alone often. Music played low, some kind of slow, pulsing beat that seemed to match my heart. He handed me a glass of water, not wine, like he wanted me sharp for whatever came next. "So, this is weird," I said, standing in the doorway, pretending I was in control. He smiled. "Not weird. I've seen the way you look at me. I'm just giving you the option to stop pretending." I should have left. Instead, I took a step closer. Then another. And when his hand found the back of my neck, I stopped thinking entirely. It was different from Liam. Slower, heavier, like every movement had weight. My pulse was loud in my ears, drowning out any thought of Aaron. Or maybe that was the point. After, we sat on his couch, our knees brushing. "Your trouble," I said. "I told you that," he replied, not apologizing for it. When I got home, Aaron was already asleep. I stood in the doorway watching him, feeling a strange mix of guilt and resentment. He hadn't done anything wrong, except not be the one I wanted in that moment. The next day Liam called. He wanted to see me. I made up an excuse about work, but he heard the hesitation in my voice. "You're not avoiding me, are you?" he asked. "Of course not," I lied. But I was. Something about Noah had shifted my balance. And yet, I wasn't ready to let Liam go either. That's when Ethan appeared. I met him through a client meeting. He was a photographer hired to shoot the campaign I was managing. Tall, lean, with an easy charm that made every word feel like it was meant for you alone. He laughed easily, but there was something in his eyes that felt knowing. During a break, he leaned against the wall beside me. "You don't strike me as someone who plays it safe," he said. I raised an eyebrow. "And what makes you think that?" "Your eyes," he said simply. "They wander." He wasn't wrong. Over the next week, Ethan and I found reasons to linger after meetings. He told me about his travels, the kind of places where no one knew your name and you could be anyone you wanted. It was intoxicating, the idea of disappearing into a version of myself without rules. One evening, he offered to show me his studio, just to see some prints he claimed. The space was dim, lit only by the glow of streetlights through the window. Photos were pinned to every wall, strangers caught in moments too intimate to be posed. "You always shoot people like this?" I asked, studying a print of two men laughing, their foreheads almost touching. "Only when I want to remember them," he said. The air between us tightened. I felt his gaze before I met it. Then he stepped closer, and I didn't move back. Ethan kissed like he was telling a secret, slow, deliberate, like he wanted each second to stick. My head spun, not from surprise but from the fact that I'd stopped caring whether this was right or wrong. By the time I left his studio, I realized something that should have terrified me. I wasn't choosing between them. I wanted all of it. The problem was, they were starting to notice each other's shadows. Liam messaged me late one night. "You've been distant. Should I be jealous?" Noah asked in person, "You seeing anyone else?" Ethan, with a knowing smile, said, "You're not the kind of man who belongs to one person, are you?" I told each of them what they wanted to hear. But the truth was getting harder to hide. Then, one evening, Aaron came home early. I was on the couch, phone in hand, Ethan's name glowing on the screen. I scrambled to lock it, but he'd already seen enough. "Who's Ethan?" he asked, voice calm in a way that felt dangerous. "Just someone from work," I said too quickly. Aaron's eyes narrowed. "We need to talk. Tonight." The words hit like a gun cocking, a warning that the bullets were coming. Aaron didn't raise his voice. That was worse. He sat across from me at the dining table, hands clasped, his gaze steady. "Who is Ethan?" he asked again. The urge to deny was immediate, but his eyes told me denial wouldn't work. "A photographer," I said carefully. "We've been working together." His silence stretched, filling the space like smoke. And I forced a laugh. And nothing. Aaron's jaw tightened. You think I don't notice? You've been different. Distant. I can smell it on you, Daniel. Other people. The words landed like a slap. My pulse spiked. You're imagining things, I said, but my voice lacked conviction. He leaned forward, eyes searching mine. If there's someone else, tell me now. I can handle the truth. I can't handle being lied to. In my mind, I saw all three of them: Liam's crooked smile, Noah's steady grip, Ethan's watchful eyes. Each one of them had taken something from me, or maybe I'd given it freely. Either way, they were in me now, and the thought of losing them all felt like stepping off a cliff. I made a mistake, I said finally, my voice low. One time. It didn't mean anything. Aaron's expression didn't change. That was how I knew he didn't believe me. One time, he repeated, like tasting the words. We sat there in the quiet, the hum of the refrigerator loud in my ears. Finally, he stood. I'm going to my sister's for a few days. The sound of the door closing behind him was a hollow echo. I poured myself a drink I didn't need and sank into the couch. My phone lit up almost instantly. Liam, miss you. Come over. Then Noah, you free tonight? Then Ethan, I've been thinking about you all day. Their messages piled up like invitations to 3 different lives. I could choose any of them. I could choose none. But the truth was, the emptiness in the apartment felt unbearable. I went to Liam first. His arms were quick around me, his kiss urgent, almost desperate. Thought you forgot about me, he said against my mouth. I couldn't, I murmured, though I already knew I wouldn't be staying. An hour later, I was at Noah's. He opened the door shirtless, eyes raking over me like I was something to devour. Rough night, he asked. You have no idea, I said, stepping inside. And still, Ethan's name hovered in my mind like an unfinished sentence. Before the night was over, I found myself at his studio. He didn't ask questions. He just pulled me into the dim light and kissed me like I was the only thing worth remembering. 3 men in one night. 3 different versions of myself. By the time I got home, the sky was shifting from black to pale gray, and the city was just beginning to stir. Aaron's side of the bed was empty. I slid in anyway, the sheets cold. My body was exhausted, but my mind wouldn't rest. I thought about what Aaron had said, that he could handle the truth, but not the lie. And I realized I wasn't sure which one I was living anymore. The phone buzzed on the nightstand. Liam again. Then Noah. Then Ethan. All waiting. All wanting. I should have felt cornered. Instead, I felt powerful. Maybe that was the real problem. By the time Aaron returned 2 days later, I'd convinced myself I could make this work. Keep the 3 of them separate, keep Aaron close enough to hold on to, keep the lies neat and manageable. He dropped his bag in the hall, his eyes cool. We still need to talk, he said. I smiled like I had all the time in the world. Of course. But inside I knew the truth. I wasn't ready to give up any of them. Not yet. Maybe not ever. Even now, as Aaron sat across from me, I felt the phantom touch of Liam's hand, the weight of Noah's gaze, the warmth of Ethan's breath. I could still hear my phone buzzing in the other room. If one of them called right now, I thought, I don't know if I'd say no.